Coming to you from our opulent and luxurious 4x8 refurbished room closet at the national headquarters in Indianapolis. With duct tape studio lights and a mic that you barely can hear, we hope to entertain and educate you. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
They call me crazy cause I'm facing all my giants. They try to scare me into thinking I can fight it. They tell me I should never even think of trying. But that's just me, I'm gonna live out in defiance.
Hello, and welcome back to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast. I am your host, Mark Seavey, Special Projects Counselor. I'm joined by Ashley Garbolja Maldonado. Ashley, how are you doing?
Hi. I'm feeling a little hyper today.
Yes.
But don't mistake my long drawn out responses for the lack of enthusiasm.
Indeed. And Jeff Daly, Hollywood Post 43 poster child and Michigan man. How are you today, sir?
I am outstanding. It's like I've got the best of the Great Lakes and the Pacific Ocean all embodied in this awesomeness. I also feel like I'm carrying that much water weight.
Yeah. I don't know where to go.
Yeah, I don't know where. Me too.
Speaking of water weight, which has nothing to do with our topic, today we're going to visit with Michael Hinkle and Serena Moyer of SkillMil Precision Iron. SkillMil uses decades of military experience and an automated approach to precisely match unique veteran and spouse skills with an employer. They are part of a team of companies that works with the American Legion Veterans Education and Employment Division to find ways to help support transitioning veterans. Michael is a Navy veteran and president of SkillMil, and Serena is a Navy spouse who oversees veteran and spouse outreach. The pair co-hosts SkillMil's podcast Diapers and Deployments, which we all love the name of that one. So let's take a quick commercial break, and we will be right back with Michael and Serena.
100 Miles for Hope is back, and we're taking it to the next level. This year, you could choose over 40 different activities and track your progress on a handy mobile app. We have sweet swag to commemorate your journey, including tech shirts, baseball caps, hoodies, pins, patches, and challenge coins. All proceeds from these purchases support veterans and military families through the Veterans and Children Foundation. Head to legion.org/100 miles to get started.
All right, now we're joined by Michael Hinkle and Serena Moyer. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come and visit with us. So we appreciate you being here. But why don't you start by telling us a little bit about SkillMil?
You know, the idea for SkillMil actually came a long time ago when I was on the USS Cheyenne, and my old CO, Noel Gonzalez, and me noticed a lot of young E4, E5s, they were transitioning out of the military. And 6 months before that, these same people had been downrange in charge of $1 million equipment, doing things that people can't dream about doing. And they fast forward, they get out and they can't find a job. And that to us, was ridiculous. And we kept helping them maybe with the resume, make some phone calls. We left the boat. Fast forward about 4 years later, we both got back together and we had this idea of starting SkillMil, to basically help veterans translate some of the skills that they use inside of the military to skill sets that they use outside of the military. And to be truthful, we were way ahead of our time, because now if you look at the world today, resumes are kind of going away and it's skill matching to get jobs now. So, what started as a way to help veterans, actually, our platform now can be used by everybody. So that's how we got started. I don't know about
Serena, what's your global role in all this?
So back when it all started, I got a phone call from the owner of SkillMil saying, "Hey, you worked for me back in 2012, 2015. I was the ombudsman for the submarine. I don't know who's familiar with that, but I was just the liaison for the families between the submarine and the family. I could communicate back and forth." Yeah. So I had a direct contact with this captain, and then also Mike, who was the chief of the boat at the time. So I had already moved away. My husband was assigned to another duty station, and I got a phone call asking if I wanted to be a part of SkillMil and work with the dream team again. And so, of course, I jumped onto it because I had such a great time working with them before, and we worked so well together. So The initial stages, I was helping the veterans with their profiles, helping them sign in and creating their profiles. Fast forward to today, 2021, and I am primarily just hosting the podcast that we have with SkillMil called Diapers and Deployments.
Nice. All right, Ashley, you are up. We'll call it first, even though I just asked the question, but we'll call you first today.
The honorary first.
Yeah.
Thank you, good sir. Thank you. So, as a veteran and a military spouse, it's interesting. So, a little backstory. I had just recently moved on to Joint Force Bowling and Anacostia, which is an Air Force Base, Navy, Coast Guard. All of them are here, right? And it's so interesting. I've had an opportunity now to meet folks out in the community, a lot of military spouses, and I know that you all are really trying your darndest to reach these amazing men and women who are spouses, who are, raising kids. And also kudos. I love the podcast name. I'm just going to throw that. I don't have children yet, but yes, you got to talk to a good friend of mine, Amanda Huffman. She does a lot of Airman to Mom stuff. Love it. Anyway, besides the point, but my question is how are you really, how are you reaching some of these military spouses? Do you have partnerships with installations? How are you getting in touch with these amazing men and women who are kind of toeing the line and kind of, I always say the ready reserve, because
Right.
that's how I feel as now a military spouse. I mean, I've always been a military spouse. I don't know. I'm having this weird conundrum lately. I just got out. I'm still a veteran, but my dependent ID doesn't say so. So I'm like,
Right.
ah.
Well, we reach out to all groups, Facebook, LinkedIn, of course, the normal channels. We've had spouses on the show, female veterans, of course, and we partnered. I'm trying to think of the name now, and I should have wrote this down before I came on. Maybe it'd have been better. That's okay though. But we treat the military spouses just like the veterans, and I'll say our platform doesn't discriminate, right? I mean, anyone can go on, fill out a profile, get matched to their skill sets. And a lot of the employers, that's where we get the bang for the buck. When we talk to the employers that are going to bring us on to find veterans, we talk about the value of the military spouse and the skill sets, because some people may look at a military spouse's resume and say, well, they change jobs every 2 or 3 years. Well, of course they did. Their husband or wife dragged them around the world. That's why. But every place they go, they normally have a new chance to shine, so to speak. And Serena, that's why, on Diapers Deployments, I talk about the downrange stuff, the military stuff. And she talks about the spouse, because we have completely different points of view on the way the military is. So I'll let her talk about some of the spouse stuff now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was not being told where to move and where to work. I was just following along wherever my husband was going. So I was fortunate enough to stay home with my babies when they were young. But as soon as we moved to our second to last duty station, my youngest was in school and I wanted to get back to working. And I was working with SkillMil, but I needed to get back into corporate, working full time in a community. So I've been able to find jobs, luckily, myself. I can teach. I have a degree in family studies and human services, so I can be a permanent substitute at most places. But we want spouses to know that we're not, SkillMil specifically, we're not leaving them behind. We want them to be able to create profiles with us, and we want them to be able to, put down on paper that they are helpful for jobs, and that they, even though they had to move around, that they can carry their skill throughout. And I think today, most places are forgiving to that lifestyle, especially as a spouse. Because like I said before, we're not moving because we want to, we're not quitting jobs because we want to, we're doing it because we have to, because we're following our service member spouse. So that's been, I feel like for me in my field, it was helpful. And my resume, even though it showed that, my breakup of South Carolina and Washington, and now here in Kansas City, I had this nice flow. And then I was able to, have SkillMil help me out, make sure it all looked right, and transitioned nicely.
So
Yeah,
just as a quick follow up. So for like certificates, so you said you are a permanent, like you can be a substitute
Yeah.
teacher. I know that every state varies on, professional credentials or
Mhm.
licenses. How
Mhm.
is SkillMil kind of helping employers understand, maybe even provide some training or like accepting of these certs, or like are states aware? Is that something you all advocate on behalf, or how does that?
So I can't speak. I can't speak and say that this is all fact, but I do know that Michelle Obama was trying to implement something where teaching certificates were available nationwide instead of every time a teacher moved state to state, she'd have to recertify. So I do not have a teaching certificate. I just have enough credits in early childhood education to put me at the level of being a substitute teacher. So I don't know about every state, but the state of South Carolina and the state of Washington, you do not need a teaching certificate to be a substitute.
Yeah, and
But
it is state by state though, Serena, because
yeah,
corpsman is a great example in the military. Corpsmen, they take care of everything in the Navy,
Mhm.
right? They get out and they can't take blood because of certificates and things. But Virginia has a great program where they'll take a corpsman, give them some training, and put them in the job market. And some other states are coming around. And also the American Legion, actually, I'm part of their employment initiative, right? Their task force. So at some point, I think there's 25 companies involved, but at some point we're going to go to DC and explain to Congress where the gaps are. Because right now certificates, there's nothing we can do, right, to change the fact that a company, you have to be certified in certain things, but that'll take Congress. And that's what the American Legion, SkillMil, and like 24 other companies, we're going to submit that. And I don't know the timeline yet, but the American Legion is working hard to change some of that things that you're talking about right now, the certificate problem.
Absolutely. That's a great plug indeed. So, if we have some other folks that are out there listening, resolutions start at local posts so we can
They do.
continue to build momentum. So yes, I appreciate the plug.
Well,
For
it's
those
a great,
who can't see me, I'm winking.
it's great. I mean, it is. When they called me and asked me if I want to be part of the task force, because as command master chief, and it's mostly for the enlisted servicemen, men and women, right? Let's be honest, the officers, when they get out, they have degrees and, they can probably write, they've been writing resumes, evals their whole career. So they don't have the problem. It's the enlisted servicemen and women that, need that certificate, that need that have that skills, but the companies that want to hire him, they need a piece of paper, and we need to change that. That's the only way. And that's going to take Congress. That's, every state can't do it individually.
I couldn't agree more.
All right, Jeff, you're up.
All right. So my honorary second, or my last, or the anchor?
Yeah,
I
you're
guess
third,
anchor.
dude.
The anchor.
I'm the
yeah.
anchor
Ooh,
question.
there you go.
All right. So they should have warned you. I'm a Marine, so I have to simplify things.
I'll talk slow.
All right, please do. Talk in crayon. It's a language now. So when I was hearing about your service, I don't know if it's an app, but it sounded to me a lot like a dating app for jobs. So it's all of your attributes, right? And then you're trying to match somebody that those attributes are desirable for. But just in your case, it gets money, and in the other case, that would be illegal.
Right.
So so we are not going to go there, but we will do an awkward transition to talking about spouses again. So what are the different challenges between matching a veteran and matching their spouse? Now, because it kind of goes back to the beginning when you said your platform is really work for anybody, and so I'm really curious about the different challenges, and do you have the same people working on them, or are they so different that they have to be treated differently?
Well, they're completely different, honestly, because if you think about, there's a couple things as the military member that are easy. They give you a VMAT when you get out, right? Verification, military experience and training. Everything you've done is listed, right? They give you a piece of paper. Well, we have a VMAT parser that basically will take all of your skills that you have in that, in about 5 seconds, puts them all into a resume style format and verifies them and your duty stations, which means for the employer that once they have that little seal that say they're verified, they don't have to guess if you are really Microsoft certified. Like, resumes, we all know you can put whatever you want on there, right? But that VMAT certifies that the government has trained you in that and you've actually done it, right? So it's real. So that makes it kind of easy for the service member. For the spouse, it's still a resume. You can upload your resume. You can go in and build your profile. So the system works for both, but for the spouse, it's a lot of manual work, honestly. They have to go in and fill out their profile more manual. And for the service member, it's drag and drop.
Oh, that's very cool. So it's so what about I don't know if Mark was planning on touching on this, but the more challenging MOSs to, I mean, if you're launching nuclear weapons for the Air Force, there's not an equivalent job.
Well, there's not, but there's a lot of soft skills. There's a lot of leadership. There's tech, here I'll give you a great example. A company came to me the other day and they don't want an engineering person. They don't want someone with an engineering degree. They said, here's what I want, Mike. I just want someone who knows about mechanics and hydraulics. Well, that's easy, right? If you're on a submarine and an aircraft carrier, no matter where you're at, if you're a mechanic in the military, you know how to, rebuild hydraulic valves. I mean, you have that skill set, and it's more about the employers understanding that and then us helping them understand that. Like you said, if you launch nuclear weapons for the Air Force, you're probably pretty technical, right? I don't know if you have any leadership because you were in the Air Force, but just
like it.
We don't have any Air Force people, so you're good to go.
But they'll be listening. You know how to turn the lights off and call the maid on your way out. So you're good. But yeah, some are challenging. But here's what I didn't mention. So with SkillMil, our platform in the background, the magic sauce, so to speak, was actually developed as part of SRI and Stanford Research Institute. You guys may know them. They invented a few things you may know, like Siri and the mouse. I think they were the second node on the internet. So, they're over in Silicon Valley where all the magic happens. But we actually own the technology for all the human resource matching, right? That's part of our background. Now, I will say that the system will get better every time someone puts data in the system. So, Jeff, an example is if someone that did that job in the Air Force ended up getting a job as, I don't know, a satellite repair person, right? The system over time will know that those skill sets match. The more data we put in the system, the better it's going to get. Right now, we need more veterans in the system to make the system better. And I have the ability to go in manually and change some of the ONET data. That's kind of the backbone of everyone's, but ours is not like that. I can go in and manually change job descriptions, what we think they're good at. And the next version is even going to have, they hire you based in the military. We all know they hire you based on what they think you can do next. Mm-hmm. So that's the next level of SkillMil, is our inferred skills. We know you've done this. You have the ability to do that. And that'll be for spouses, veterans. That'll be for everybody. So the system's way smarter than I am, I have to tell you.
Well, duh, you weren't in the Air Force.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. I don't know who's smarter. I had to go out to sea my whole life. They get per diem in hotels. I don't know.
Yeah, I know when I came out of Afghanistan, we went to an Air Force, to an Air Force base. And the guy apologized to us that we had 4 people to a room after I'd just lived in a tiny little hut with like 10 guys. So if I could do it all over again, 100% going to the Air Force.
Yeah, living on an Air Force base, I'm just like, this is real luxury. I'm like, oh, wow.
My cousin was a special forces guy, Army, and he tells me horror stories. And I'm like, hey, I had to eat off paper plates once. So don't tell me all your hardships. All right.
Well, Jeff, you'll be happy to know that while you did anchor the first round, Holly has set it up today so that we're doing sort of a snake draft thing.
Uh-oh.
So once we're done with our commercial break here in just a second, you will be back up. So don't give me that sort of blank stare like, oh, I hadn't figured out what to talk about yet. So, all right.
We like this?
Yeah. So we'll be back in 30 seconds while Jeff works with his crayon to figure out what his question's going to be.
All right.
Delete.
The American Legion is Veterans Strengthen America. We're in your community, supporting veterans, service members, and their families, enriching the lives of young people and promoting citizenship and patriotism. Our members are passionate about these core values. Help strengthen America by joining the American Legion today. For more information, go to legion.org/join.
All right, we're rejoining Michael Hinkle and Serena Moyer, and we're talking about the matching up of sort of MOSs with jobs and veterans with jobs and spouses with jobs. And we are going to Jeff for the first one of round two.
Wow, I get the lead off bat this round. So you said your platform works for everyone. I live in Los Angeles, and I can't remember the last time I had a job. So I'm not sure what could you do for a guy like me? No, I'm actually not gonna have you answer that because I have no skills for you to match. I have a useless degree in economics. Nobody's hiring that unless you have a PhD. So I'm gonna let you sit on that one, Michael, and then I'm gonna go over to Serena, because I want to hear a little bit more about your podcast.
Okay.
I see you have all the professional stuff. You guys are good to go with your microphones and everything. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the pitch on your podcast?
So the podcast is called, like I said, Diapers and Deployments. Who's got it worse? So we talk about the good.
They're both pretty crappy, right?
Yeah, we talk about the good, the bad, and the oh crap. Like what happens. So we had this idea, Mike was a service member for 30 years and I was a spouse for 20. My husband just retired on March 31st from the Navy.
Yeah.
So, and we were high school sweethearts, but so I've been with him since before he joined the Navy, and I've kind of gone through every step of the journey with him. Anything that could happen, I feel like happened to us. And I'm sure every service member can say that, but I just felt like every single thing that could happen happened to us. And I got a lot to say about it. So
she does have a lot to say. Yeah.
So our podcast, we always like to have a guest, and Mike and I like to talk about things that are going on in our life. I think we're pretty funny. So we talk about, lately it's been our transition, my husband and I's transition out of the military, because, that was probably the most scariest time for me as a spouse. I mean, I was always scared and worried when he was deployed and whatnot, but I trusted obviously his crew members and his captain. So I knew he was always in good hands. But then when it came down to, we were so institutionalized and we were about to be thrown into the real world. I mean, we went from our high school jobs. He went straight to the Navy. I went straight to college, and then I became a mom after we got married. So I stayed home, and we were terrified. And I mean, my husband would probably say he knew everything was going to work out, but I didn't, I didn't know how it was going to work out. I didn't know if he was going to be able to get a job. He is a nuclear mechanic on a submarine. And like you said, there's no submarines in Kansas where we wanted to live for him to do the job. And he didn't want to work on a base anymore. There's all these shipyard jobs available for guys like him, but you have to be on the coast on a base and working. And he was just done with that. So the past 12, 13 episodes that we've had, that's what we've been talking about. It's just our process of leading up to getting out, because it was during COVID when it was like really, we were right in the thick of it. And that was really hard as a family, especially setting up our household good move and things like that. So we talk a lot about that. And then I do touch base on him trying to find his job, and how, when he puts in for the Navy, it's called an NEC. I know the Army's an MOS. So when he puts in his NEC, it brings up all these things about, working on submarines and being a nuclear mechanic on a submarine. And he wasn't trying to work on a nuclear base or a nuclear reactor here in Kansas. It's too far away from where we want to live. So SkillMil gave him the tools with his profile to pinpoint those things that he can do as a leadership, like in his leadership role in the submarine, how he could do that in the real world. And he was able to get a job doing the things that he did on the submarine, but SkillMil helped him translate that. And, because he writes manuals and procedures and all those things on the submarine. And now at his new job, that's what he's doing for their products. So we talk a lot about that. We talk obviously to our guests that we have. We had American Legion just recently, and we talked about all the ways that they help veterans. And I have to say, I didn't know any of that. And, I'm going to the American Legion night tonight to play bingo. So that's what I thought the
Yeah.
American Legion was. And I'm not trying to be rude, but that's what I thought it was. I mean,
Right.
my mom loves to go play bingo at the American Legion. My parents aren't service members, but they go and play. And after our conversation 2 weeks ago with the guy we had on, I'm sorry,
Joe.
Mike, Joe, yeah.
Joe Sharp. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I learned so much, and we want our veterans and their spouses to hear that kind of stuff, because I feel like the military falls short in providing this kind of information to their service members. I know that retention is what they want in the military, but if someone is getting out, no matter whether they're retiring, they're being medically discharged, or they're just done, they need to know all of these things that are available to them. And I knew none of that. And my husband didn't really know any of it. And that is what SkillMil's podcast, Diapers and Deployments, we're trying to educate everybody.
Well, nice. I think you hit on something that I was kind of thinking about before, but didn't really know how to bring it up in a question, is the Marine Corps family. Or not the Marine Corps family, sorry. I am in the cult.
Yeah.
I'm the
We're in a
cult of the
cult.
Corps.
Yeah.
And it's a great place to be. Come on.
Don't wear sneakers and stay away from
Right.
Kool-Aid. I don't know what your cult is like.
So the auxiliary is an amazing place for all spouses now, because now it's male and female spouses of veterans or active duty. And I think that support you're talking about that's missing. I know some people have found that in the American Legion Auxiliary.
Okay.
And it's an amazing thing. And I have people in my post that were part of it, and they said it got them through a lot of deployments. They didn't necessarily, especially enlisted people, they weren't involved in, the officers' wives come in and they take control of everything, and the enlisted ones just feel like they're kind of following along in the little club.
Mhm.
And they found comradeship at the American Legion post, even when the veteran, or the active duty service person was away. So it kind of really leads into the conversations you're having on your podcast
Mhm.
are supporting that audience.
Mhm.
And it's amazing that the platform you're talking about is supporting that audience. So what is it that we can do as the American Legion better to not only help you support specifically that audience? Now I get how you're helping this. I think it's amazing what you're doing with the military and veteran folks, because it makes sense to, this brain. For the spouses, what can we do better as an American Legion? And not only just to help you directly, but to support all spouses and family members of veterans and service people, especially deployed.
I can say, I don't know if it just was because we were trying to, transition during the middle of COVID and nothing was open and there was nothing, I couldn't go to meetings or groups or anything, like none of that was available. But I would say, the service member has they go through a class or whatever to be let go from the military. And I feel like there should be things available like that to the spouses, where they can get all of this information. There's nothing that's spouse specific. It's all military member specific. And I think that's where they fall short the most, because like Mike and I talk about on our podcast, he would never go do any of that stuff. He went to his transition class because that's what you have to do when you're getting out of the military. But they're not telling spouses, go do this and do that. Like they're not offering anything like that to us. And in reality, we're the ones that are wanting to know, and we're the ones kind of doing it and running the show. I mean, the service member's always gone or always at work or whatever. So the one running the household and running, all the moving parts, we should be the ones being able to get all that information. How to help your veteran, sign up with proper health care for your whole family. Because who's taking the kids to the doctor all the time? Probably not the service member. It's going to be the parent that's home. And, so my husband's like, I don't know what to do about medical care. You just always handle it. And I'm like, right. And I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. So I feel like that's where everybody's kind of falling short. I don't know what, there's no like pinpoint, this is what you could do better. I just think we need more information as spouses on everything when it comes to what available resources that we have.
Every time we have someone on the show, we talk about, we learn something new
Every
that we
time.
didn't know on,
Mhm.
you know, and me as the senior enlisted leader feel like, man, I wished I would have had that information to share with those people on their way out. It's almost like overload now. Every time we learn something, it's awesome.
Absolutely.
But, you know,
I mean, not to interrupt, but my husband listens to our podcast as a service member. He doesn't listen to it because his wife is one of the co-hosts. You know, like he listens to it, and he just actually told me recently he listened to the American Legion episode specifically, and he said that was so informative. And I was like, I know, right? And like, and we didn't know any of that, and we wish we had known a lot because he was going through some stuff that he needed help with, and he just kind of was thrown to the wolves, figure it out for yourself. But he's like, man, if I would have known, I could have gone there to have them help me out with like his rating and like getting his disability and things like that. He's like, that would have been made a world of difference for me. So that if to me, like that's one person that so far was helped, but like we want all of our listeners to be helped, and we want to expand to everybody, spouses and veterans. We want them to know that, you know, you can find out this information, but it should be readily available to them. They shouldn't have to go dig, right?
I think a really good kind of metaphor for this. So for our listeners and our viewers that have like children, maybe elementary school children. I don't have children, but when my brothers were growing up, I used to always have to like make sure they did their homework, right?
Mhm.
And I think it's the same thing for a service member who is going to their transition coursework,
Mhm.
and they get all of these things,
Mhm.
and then like they stuff it in the bottom of their backpack,
Mhm.
and everything gets all crumbled up, right? And then there's like food on it, and there's coffee stains, and all of the above, right? There's, obviously, your kids aren't drinking coffee. If they are, cut it back, cut it back now. But you know, like I feel like that's very true for service members because they come home with this fire hose of information. They're looking at all these papers, and then as the spouse, like you're like, okay, hon,
Regurgitate that.
Can you explain that? And they just look at you like they're just their souls are gone. They're like,
Right.
I did the class, I'm done, let's go.
Mhm.
And then you're like, but
Yeah.
hey, right? I think that's, I had to share that. I just think that's so funny.
that's
I've used that
perfect.
I've used that all the time. I'm like, there's just crumblies, like,
Yeah.
and there's all kinds of stuff in the bottom of that backpack, and you just have to pull it out. And then,
Right.
you know, I think transition in itself, and I think as a community, a Military Connect community can do better
Mhm.
in making sure resources are available in time and place, right? Because like, just because you're sitting in a course doesn't necessarily like mean that information is relevant to you in that time.
Right.
But like when you are moving on to that next spot and showcase, right? So you're like, oh, we're going to go to Kansas City. I want to do XYZ, right?
Mhm.
Now that's important. And now you're like, oh, I have a state office. And I'm really happy that you had an opportunity to meet Joe because I got to intern with education and employment, and Joe is such an amazing mentor, and he's just a wealth of knowledge, and his team at our DC office. But my question is going to kind of tie into education. So for all my backpack jokes and yay, so much fun, so much fun. So as someone who's formerly worked in higher education, you know, some of the processes that you've described, you know, these job skill transfer kind of metrics, right? So like you're pairing the job, the MOS, the occupation with here's the hard skills, here's the soft skills. What's kind of your role at SkillMil with folks who have to maybe go back to school, or they do want to do that 180 in degree and they have the soft skills, but now they need, like we've talked a little bit about certs, they maybe need a degree, or maybe they need that master's degree. Like, what is your role in kind of potentially advocating or educating them on what that next step could look like from a counseling or an advising standpoint?
Ashley, I need you on my marketing team because we just partnered with a bunch of colleges. So we recognized that was actually a gap, right? And we're new. So, you know, a little bit forward each day, I'd say. We just partnered with Florida Atlantic University. We partnered with ATA. We have a place out, NC Labs. A lot of that cybersecurity, like I think there's like 430,000, security job or cybersecurity / analyst type jobs in the United States that they can't fill. And people that we're talking about know that veterans have the ability to learn quickly. Like that's one of the gifts that we have, because that's what you have to do in the military or you fail. They have courses that they can take and get jobs right away, not go to college for 4 years. They have 8-month or 1-year things to learn Python, you name it. So we're partnering with educational services. And also we are starting to reach out now to colleges for SkillMil to be their veteran resource center and to be their career center. The goal for us is to be in the colleges as the veteran resource center. So we just started that move about 3 months ago, and we have a lot of traction already because we do recognize not everyone. And when you talk about college too, it's not really, not everyone wants to go to college, but that certificate, or, if you want to be a Harley Davidson mechanic or whatever you want to be, we're trying to partner with those technical people and those schools that are underserved, especially, and they want veterans. They want veterans in their school. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that myself.
That's excellent. It's funny you mentioned Harley Davidson. I just spoke to my father last night and he was so excited. He just got new LED lights and he was like out in his Electra Glide Classic. And, my dad's like a big teddy bear, like on this big motorcycle, just like roaming around. Anyway, that's besides the point. Just little things. And just like, oh, that's so cute. My dad was super excited by Harley Davidson. But, but you're right though. I'm super excited to hear that you've partnered up with, some universities, community colleges. I think you really just, again, have to meet people in that time and space. And I know each state has their own veteran service office.
Yes.
And, they partner, like, for example, hailing from Ohio, right, where we had Ohio Means Jobs, we had the Ohio Department of Veteran Services. A lot of those places, and what was the other one? Ohio Department of Education, right? So a lot of them will partner with themselves. Have you, kind of dived into looking at some state partnerships? I know you're in Alabama and Serena, you're in Kansas City, so Kansas, okay. So like, have you had those conversations maybe at like state levels? I know this is a follow-up question. I know Mark's like nail biting, like, Ashley, when are you gonna?
Well, I know I have, when I transitioned out, I went straight to the career one source. Every state calls it something different. And I met with the veteran advocate guy because, the guy here at least knows what he's doing. He has a pulse of the community and the veterans. Not all those offices are created equal. But luckily I have a good one here. So yeah, I went to him right away, and it's challenging in other states. I mean, you can't just walk down there, but you have to make that phone call, let them know you're there to help. But I did that, and Serena has just got back to Kansas City, so I don't think she's went to Kansas City yet and done any of that stuff. But I have a guy in Tennessee. He went to Tennessee. I visited some of the ones in Florida. So yeah, and they're a great resource. Yet another resource for veterans that is underutilized, honestly.
Well, thank you for indulging me, because this is my bread and butter and I love it.
Yeah, it's great. Some of those offices do a great job. Some of them, they've been there too long. It's hard to fire some people.
Agree and disagree. Yes. Yes. Work to be done. Always.
Yes, always.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, as we close out here, one sort of quick thing, and Serena had kind of referenced it to you. I know that when I went through the transition, when I was coming out of the military, I was literally already enrolled in law school for my 3rd year, and I had like a week to get out. And not only did the military treat the transition as if it was a checklist where literally every person had to do every item. And I kept telling them, like, I am going to law school next Monday. Just sign my DD-214 and send me out. And the one size fits all really didn't work for me. And just to comment on Serena, the idea of having the spouses there is if there was one change I can think of, that would be a good one. I didn't get married until I got out, and there was very good reason, because I saw all the confusion and everything else that was happening. I was like, what a nightmare. Like, I ended up sending my best friend from the Army to be my representative on the family readiness group, because I didn't have any faith that anyone would get the actual facts. But yeah, Michael, was that your experience as well? That it was just we kept trying to shove your foot into a boot, whether it fit or not?
It was. And, like she said, the bottom of the backpack, I mean, they fill it, they fill you full of information in 4 days, and then you go home to your wife and 90 days later, when you actually get out, she goes, oh, what kind of insurance are we going to have? You're like, oh yeah, that guy talked for 30 minutes. I should know everything about that. Hold on. Let me grab my notes. It does take research though. And it is a check in the box. So I also go and I'm part of a transition panel at the Air Force Base. So, and let them ask me questions, at the end of their transition class. And it's always the same questions without fail, right? The same nervousness. And that's at the end of the class. So they still have the questions. And over there at the Air Force Base, I think they do a really good job here, but all TGPS classes are not created equal either. But yeah, I did feel like that. I did mine in Pensacola and they did a good job, but they have to get the information out that they tell them to get out. But I'm going to give you one example of some bad information that I got. Some of these people that teach TGPS or come in as guest speakers, this guy was still talking about when you're in an interview, make sure you use a blue pen to circle some questions. I'm like, no one's looking at blue pens anymore. Or yeah. So, some of those people that come in to talk to you, probably not qualified, I would say, to be there. But they check their box, right?
Serena, do you have some thoughts on that one?
I mean, that is just, I could talk about this all day. Like, just like what Mike said, 90 days goes by and his wife's saying, what do we do about this, that, or the other? And he's like, and that is exactly where we were. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this should be a group thing. And it shouldn't be 90 days before you transition. I think it should be like it shouldn't be like one class for a week and then that's it. I think it should carry on the whole time that you're about to get out. Like there should be someone helping you set these things up as you go, like, okay, you're going to have to decide this. And I know that's not their job. I get it. I understand. But like what they're doing now, I feel like is not the best. So maybe my idea is not the best either, but there needs to be more information given to somebody else that's not running a nuclear submarine at the same time. Am I?
I do think you have a good idea, but what I do think is those people's job is the exact opposite. And they probably give up on retention at 90 days. Yeah. And they're like, let's send them over there to transfer out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my husband literally worked until the last moment. It wasn't like this thing where, I hear some beautiful stories where people have like these long extended times of leave and they're not needed at work anymore. And they just have all this time to get things squared away. That was not our experience. And I bet we're not the only ones like that. I mean, if my husband was able to go to, like if his submarine was able to go to sea, they would have taken him. Like there would have been no, you can stay back and figure out your life because you're about to get out of the military. It would have been, and I would have been left up to me to be alone to do that. So I know that we can do better for the veterans and the spouses on how they transition out.
Well, and I think you said, especially for the senior guys, they work until the very last day. And a lot of times, we'll land on our feet because we kind of have a plan. But some of those junior sailors and, you can't do that to them. And I notice they do it to them all the time. The Army is a little different. And I only have a small snapshot, but, my cousin, his relief was there a year beforehand. And, he had plenty of time to work on transition. And, when I was getting out, I met the guy that was going to relieve me on a Monday. I quit working on Thursday, and Friday I was like, see you later. I mean, so I at least had 3 or 4 days. But some people, their relief shows up after they leave, after they've already gotten out. Months later, their relief shows up. So they literally are still getting phone calls on terminal leave. So that's a military issue. They need to do a better job at giving people time.
Sure.
And now, they're doing Skill Bridge. They're giving people 6 months to work for someone else when they couldn't give me 2 days. I don't understand what's going on with this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are obviously running short on time here, but we very much appreciate both Michael and Serena joining us today. For everyone else, we will be back here in 30 seconds. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Ashley, we have just been listening to Michael and Serena, and let's get your takeaway first.
So I love the energy personally. I mean, as an educator trainer, I think that there's so much that needs to be done in this space. And there are a lot of folks that are working on, these little niche projects, I think from state resources to everything that, Mike and Serena are doing. I think like my biggest takeaway here is like there are so many resources out there and you want to always do your research and start as early as possible, and don't be afraid to be vulnerable, authentic, and ask questions. And also unpack that backpack from your TAP, class, because there are going to be spouses asking questions. I think we all kind of can agree that that is a takeaway here. Like, unpack the backpack, lay out the resources, make a plan.
Yeah. And Jeff?
I don't know about all that plan making, but I would have just been this. I would have been the spouse that was like, "Huh?" Just saying, like, "How was your day?" Fine. Yeah.
Great.
But I think that the American Legion plays a big role in this, and I'm kind of seeing it as an opportunity for growth for the American Legion family through the auxiliary, just to really serve that segment of the population. I don't know if our service officers can help, like if the veteran doesn't want to deal with it, because I know a lot of veterans don't like dealing with the bureaucracies and being asked a bunch of questions, and if it's something that benefits the entire family and the person's an actual dependent, if they could be allowed to speak directly to service officers, and maybe I'll write a resolution so you can read it. Mark?
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I would have been that guy too. Like if I had been married and I had to go through those TAP classes and my spouse had asked me about the insurance, I would have no idea. I wouldn't have been listening to a single thing. I would have sat there in the classroom to just check the box so that I could get out of that classroom and get on with my life. And I feel like that's probably the vast bulk of people. Now I had a transition plan because when I went back into the military, I always planned on going right back to law school as soon as I got out. So mine was super easy, but I remember going through those classes and they didn't apply to me. And so it was kind of a waste of time. Like I would have preferred some of the E4s in our unit that were transitioning out. It would have been nice for them to get some of these classes other than me taking up space in it, because I wasn't doing anything there. I wasn't going to use anything. I hate the cookie cutter military approach to things where you have to check every one of the boxes. Every one of the boxes don't apply to everyone. That's kind of the problem with it. But
Right.
yeah, so it is what it is. So folks, thank you very much for listening to the podcast. Remember to subscribe to the Tango Alpha Lima on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're there, rate and review us, preferably 5 stars. And if you want to send us feedback, you can comment on YouTube or Facebook, or you can send us an email at tangoalphalima@legion.org. Ashley, Jeff, I will see you next week. Bye.